Hello everyone, I'm Dante, this is Low Manor, and welcome to our look into the lore and Easter eggs behind the tragic story of King's Row, its history, its hidden secrets, and where it fits into the Overwatch universe. At the end of this episode, we'll be handing over the choice to you guys to pick which map to cover next, so make sure to let us know what you want to see in the comment section below. Unlike the previous map Oasis that depicted a hopeful future for a war-torn country, King's Row, situated in the heart of London, has many centuries of history and remains one of the most iconic cities in the world. Subtle hints can be seen to its heritage scattered throughout. From the more obvious chimes of Big Ben from the looming Westminster Tower alongside double-decker red buses and the parked black cabs, through to the more subtle nods in the form of old British pubs, bookshops and even street signs. London remains a prominent global city, but its recent past has seen more than its fair share of dark times. The map itself is riddled with details that show the lives of those that have lived and still live within the streets day to day. From the makeshift setup residing in the initial attacker's spawn, acting as a base of operations. Potentially for a mission running longer than expected, with an arcade machine sitting in the corner and a pool table set up. Not something you would expect in a short-term mission. Clearly a team has been here for a while, perhaps Lena Oxton has something to do with this, following the recall with Winston. Long before the idea of Omnics was even a twinkle in the eye of their as yet unknown inventor, London was a successful city, respected on the global stage and with a place at the forefront of the industrial revolution of financial markets. Its constant need to advance eventually created a hole in the workforce that no one wanted to fill. A golden opportunity presented itself, a way to give all citizens a place amid all the advancements of technology, industry and social issues. It was the words of Omnic Corp that promised this golden age, and King's Row, along with the rest of London and the UK as a whole, was on board. Its prayers seemingly answered. By no means were they alone in this. But the company of the rest of the world in pursuing this dream would prove to be little comfort in the long run. Unfortunately, as we know, the promises of Omnic Corp were hollow, and their execution lacking. The world had been caught in a scam of a magnitude never seen before, bringing with it instability and catastrophe. While little is recorded about the actions or events in London between the fall of Omnica and what followed, eventually war reached the history-laden cobbled streets of King's Row. The Omniums, created to serve humanity, mysteriously reactivated and set about attempting to destroy it. Whether the United Kingdom played host to an Omnium of its own is unclear, but the island nation was not spared the wrath of the robotic forces. The crisis affected all countries differently, and the fallout pushed them to their limits. As Omnics started to develop and began to understand their own newfound independence, and how they fit into the new world, forever changed by their presence, how the people reacted to this sudden self-awareness divided countries, cities, and even families. The resentment of war and loss weighing heavily on the minds of many. Many overcame this, accepting Omnics and integrating them into society as equals. King's Row was unfortunately not one of these. The original promise had sparked a dream quickly squashed by the corruption and deceit of Omnic Corp, replacing it with suspicion and resentment, which remains apparent even to the King's Row we see today. Society as a whole has forced Omnics to live as a subclass, there only to serve, as mere objects and possessions. Nowhere on the map shows this better than the final checkpoint, an entryway into the Undercity that resides out of sight to the average person, looking more like a horrific dystopian monolith to oppression than what we would expect after the advancements of Overwatch. The objective of the map also sheds light as to how extreme the opposition to Omnics is in its most extreme cases. The payload, a giant EMP bomb on its way to deliver a fatal blow to the Undercity, destroying the thousands of Omnics that live below in the process. Who exactly would benefit from this is unknown, but clearly someone is willing to go to any lengths to purge this already subservient underclass from King's Row. This isn't the first time a payload has been delivered to the factory though. The first time takes us back to the days of Overwatch as the golden age was coming to an end. Its popularity waning globally, with some countries outright rejecting their support. One such place was the UK, whose government rejected the openness and understanding gained in the decades following the crisis, instead choosing to repress the Omnic population through legislation, forcing a national register of Omnics, preventing their integration into society. This caused tension amongst the population, generations still holding grudges since the crisis, with other more open-minded groups wanting equality, for Omnics to become citizens with their rights upheld, along with those of humans. But at this time, they were the minority, at least openly, and in the political arena. However, the veil of progress was being attempted, with the construction of a new complex for Omnics, allowing them to have homes and to build for a new future. Well-known progressive Omnics were even present, with Takatha Mondata making an appearance as construction began. Unfortunately, the complex was intended to be a new level of subjection, the start of what would make Omnics a true subclass living under the city itself, not the towering metropolis that had been promised. It's hard to say for certain, but this could have been the turning point that led to our introduction of Null Sector, an Omnic terrorist organisation with the intent of Omnic rights through force, willing to crush any opposition. Human losses were merely an end to a means that they saw as just. Considering what they accomplished, Null Sector must have resources far grander than we've seen so far, and it would be naive to think they had been defeated in their entirety. As they launched an attack on King's Row, taking many of the residents hostages, including the visiting Mondata and other Omnics, constructing multiple anti-aircraft emplacements, and able to support the area with drop pod deployments, a shock attack force able to deploy within minutes. This is no minor force, but a well-equipped organisation. As Overwatch watched this unfold, Strike Commander Morrison could stand by no longer, and authorised the deployment of Overwatch, including a fresh out of training Lena Oxton on her very first mission. Fortunately, Overwatch were able to push through the entrenched forces, disabling the anti-aircraft turrets and delivering a bomb to the doors of the factory housing Null Sector's temporary stronghold. What happened next is somewhat of a mystery. There are no other references to Null Sector, but it is clear the construction continued, making the King's Row we see today. If we walk through the streets, we can see evidence for the existing tension that remains. Graffiti can be seen throughout, spreading an anti-Omnic sentiment on the very street itself, appearing constantly throughout the mid-part of the map, next to the torn and worn posters of Omnic rights, even going so far as to banning them from certain establishments. This pub in the centre of the map shows just how deep this runs, along with the Moriarty bookshop, presumably named after the notorious villain from Sherlock Holmes. And then we have the most egregious example of Omnic abuse, the residential area known as Underworld. Instead of spiralling up as a symbol of hope, it drives deep into the earth, a fitting representation of the oppression and subjugation over the decades. Although the approach taken has been dark and even harrowing to consider, not everyone feels the same. A spark of hope still remains in the streets. Piercing through the cracks of the abuse is the unity we see in many other parts of the world. From the Shambali searching for understanding in what it means to be a free Omnic, to Numbani, a city formed on the unity between man and Omnic. Although things seem dark, the same is true in King's Row, most notably shown by the pro-Omnic rallies held during the visit of Takatha Mondata, which ultimately led to his death at the hands of Widowmaker on behalf of Talon. For what reason is still ultimately unclear, but it would appear someone is set to gain from increased tensions, perhaps even all-out war. In the wake of the attack, a small shrine is developed at the site of his death, burning candles and incense left to honour his memory and his vision. Fortunately for King's Row, there is one shining beacon of hope that can never be extinguished: Tracer. Calling London her home, no one inspires more hope than she can, seen on the faces of everyone who recognises her. So even though times seem bleak, things are looking good for King's Row, even shown by the brightening of the whole map in recent updates, with the streets still bustling despite the ever-looming threat of the second Omnic crisis. King's Row is determined to carry on with life as usual, with the acceptance of Omnics and inevitability as the grudges of old are lost to the history books. What other heroes are waiting to join the fight? As Tracer says,
"The world could always use more heroes."
This positivity is present throughout as a stark contrast to the apparent negative feelings of others. Even the small things such as an active cinema, the Meridian, brightening up the mood even as it was essentially a staging ground for an assassination. And just a stone's throw away is the iconic statue of Takatha Mondata, located on a roundabout at the heart of King's Row, in the shadow of Big Ben. When and why exactly it was constructed is still unknown, but it's a monument to progress and a sign that Mondata and other Omnics have not been forgotten, even if some would like them to be. Even the litter of King's Row has been known to contain foresight of future characters and releases, revealing the Junkers all the way back in beta. That remains true now as we see them stacked up and flying about the level. As we roam the corridors of the nearby buildings, we see a decor that harkens back to the Golden Age. Paintings hang on the walls. One in particular stands out. Although it has nothing to do with the story of King's Row or Omnics at all, it appears to be a throwback to the barbarians of Diablo, just on a horse and with guns. Possibly a more effective way of sending the Lord of Terror back to hell, and not to Diablo 4 perhaps, or just a painting. Either way, if I don't see a mounted barbarian wielding guns at BlizzCon, I may be a little bit disappointed. Now it's time for you guys to let us know what map you'd like us to cover next. First up is the runner-up from last time, Numbani, a city that's been brought into the limelight a lot more in recent events. Would you like to see a trip around the seemingly quiet and peaceful roads of the City of Harmony? Or would you prefer the most enigmatic of all of Overwatch's maps, the picturesque location resting on the edge of the Aegon Sea, Ilios? What secrets lie under those ancient ruins? Thanks for joining us on this tour of King's Row. Did you learn anything new? Is there anything else you think we should have covered? Let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell if you want notifications of future video releases. Remember to vote for your pick for the next map in the comment section below, and until next time, I've been Dante, thanks for watching.